Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. In this day and age where everyone's lives are online, this old phrase is more important now than ever. Whether you have met a job interview or have met people at an event, chances are someone is going to Google you to learn more about who you are. So how do you go about managing your professional brand online to ensure it sets you apart, builds trust, and truly reflects who you are? To take a deeper dive into this is Kamila Karwowski, Strategic Director at JanKelly. Thanks so much for being here with me, Kamila.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and we had a great chat earlier about this. And
we did.
I mean, you've got such a vast expertise in this area, so lots of insights to share. But
certainly, yeah.
To kick us off, why is personal branding important?
Well, like you just said, the first thing people do when they meet you or after even they've seen your phone number, they've gotten an email from you, is Google you. Mm-hmm. So more than ever before, people decide what information they want to get, where they want to get it from, when they want to get it. So being able to be there and have your professional brand be online and representative of who you are is really, really important.
And where should people start, and what platforms should they be on?
You know what? It depends on so many things. So as you said, the first thing that I would recommend is for people to identify why is it that I decide that today is a good day for me to start thinking about building my professional brand. So that could be so many different things. For example, you're looking for a new career opportunity, or you are looking to recruit top talent into your business. True. That is also a huge one. You're looking to build your thought leadership, become an influencer in your industry, in your business, or even generating leads, identifying new potential customers and nurturing them through that journey. So depending on the reason as to why you've decided that today is the day, you start thinking and looking at all of the different social media channels that are out there. Is it a blog? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Instagram? If you're in the business, for example, of developing beauty content, Instagram is a great platform for you. It's highly visual. It's where people go to get that information. If, however, you're a lawyer or you're in a more professional field, LinkedIn remains the number one platform for professionals out there. And so LinkedIn is where I would start, in my opinion.
So I love that, like really starting with the why, like what your goal is before you pick a platform, so that you can make sure that you're, curating your profile, your content, everything to, achieve that goal. And in terms of that, so how do you set your profile up? Any tips about?
Yeah, so if you look at, for example, LinkedIn, and the majority of the profiles will have, if not as many, they'll have a few similar fields. Profile picture, huge.
Of course.
Think professional.
Yeah.
And make sure that you focus on who you are. Bring that personality out. But at the end of the day, make sure it's about you. A lot of people will have a lot of different people in their profiles, or their cats, or whatever. Think about making sure the focus is on you, because that's who you're trying to focus on.
I find that so funny that people still have photos that are very distracting. They're not just them professionally. It's like my wedding photo, or I was in a bridal party, or here's my animal.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially on LinkedIn, you really want it to be professional. And you know what? Get a great professional headshot if you have the opportunity. But if you don't, there's a lot of different tips you can use out there to even use your iPhone to get a professional picture. So really anybody can do it. The second part is making sure that your profile is complete. So nothing builds your credibility and inspires confidence from your target audience more than a complete profile without any typos, without any mistakes, and all of that great stuff. So a lot of people will still keep their the default cover photo on LinkedIn updated. Make sure that it's representative of your industry, of what you're trying to focus on. Make sure that all of the different fields are updated, and go above and beyond. A lot of people will put their title in the headline on LinkedIn, for example, but try to be a little bit more dynamic, and that's an opportunity for you with 200 characters, really, when you think about it, to use keywords, because at the end of the day, LinkedIn is its own search engine, so you want to make sure you use keywords so that people can find your profile. And also make sure it's dynamic, make sure that it speaks to the value that you're actually bringing to your audience, so that they can easily identify that before they start digging into the rest of your profile.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once you're sort of there, you're present, you've shown up, you look good online. How do you build your network from that?
Again, so many different ways. The first one is look internally. You have a lot of colleagues, you have partners, you have customers, you have coworkers, you have old classmates. Start by adding all of these people in there. And then start looking externally. Like you said, you go to events, you get business cards, you meet people at conferences, you go to networking events. As soon as you have that first touch point with somebody, and I think I did this with you when we first met, as soon as we got off the phone together, the first thing I did is send you an invitation on LinkedIn, and go above and beyond. Add a little personalized note. Say, hey, it was so lovely chatting with you about X, Y, and Z. I'm really looking forward to this day. Hoping we can connect on LinkedIn.
Which is really helpful down the road when you want to go back and maybe it's a contact you haven't chatted to in a long time. You realize you're connected. How did we meet? But if you've sent them like a little message, great chatting with you on the phone for this, or great meeting you at X event, it's a great, long-term strategy for remembering how you know your contacts.
Yes,
and it's also, to your point, it's building good habits. This is the way the industry is going. We want to be connected and be online, and you're building your pipeline long term, and you don't know where your career is going to go. So building those good habits of linking in with people right away. For myself, if I'm at an event, I meet people, I will literally sneak off to the bathroom and tag everybody that I've just met. I'm just taking 5 minutes out just to make sure I don't forget anybody, and I'm just linking in with people right away because time goes on and we think we'll get to that and we just don't.
Yeah,
so
and
it's building
you
those
meet
habits.
a lot of people, and I'm definitely guilty of this, forget names and all these things. So it's a great way to remember names. Like you said, it's a great way to remember how you met. And you said you don't know where your career will go, but you also don't know where these people might end up.
So what are some of those good habits that folks should be getting into?
Well, like you said, making sure that you keep it top of mind to invite people to your network as soon as you've met them so that it is fresh in your mind, but also in their mind. At the end of the day, they'll remember meeting you, they'll remember connecting with you. And then making it part of your daily routine. Really, if we start thinking of it as a chore and something that we need to remember every week, it won't happen. So the only way to really tackle something like building and nurturing your professional brand online is if it's part of your daily routine. So just like checking and scrolling through Instagram for fun is, think of leveraging the same habits to looking at LinkedIn and commenting on other people's content, posting your own content, seeing who's moved, who's looking for a new opportunity, does it align with what I'm doing, and all of that great stuff.
Yeah, it's a great way to stay connected to your network, to get a pulse on what's happening with those in similar roles or in different roles. And I also find actually when I finish a project, I look at who I worked with on that project, and if I haven't yet LinkedIn with them, I do.
Yeah.
That's another little habit
perfect.
I do. So we've got about a minute left. How do you decide what content to share?
You know what? That's always a hard one. So there's so many different things to look at. What I would suggest, and I know it's a little bit the marketing person in me saying this, but think of it a little bit strategically and think of developing a content plan or a loose editorial calendar, because it might seem really daunting to think of what content you want to post on a specific day when that day arrives. But if you've already thought about the things that you wanted to share and talk about a month in advance or at least a week in advance, then planning that out makes more sense.
What about for busy professionals that maybe they don't want to do a content calendar, like, it's not their primary goal to build an audience, but just something they want to stay on top of? How often should they post? Or how little can they post, maybe? Because I know some people won't want to post too often.
Once a week. I would say minimum
Really?
once a week. The ideal frequency, and this is just anecdotal research, it obviously depends on your goal, your audience, your industry, and all of these different things, but on average, twice a week is kind of ideal. Max 5. And I say this because over 5, you will start to annoy people a little bit. So
I thought once a week could be a lot for, updates, but okay, good to hear.
But again, think of it as a mix of curated and created content. So you're not necessarily writing an article or a blog post. You might just have found a really interesting article, decide that it's worth sharing with your network, add your own spin on it with your own point of view, and that's it.
And that's less work.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back to continue the conversation. Back, we're joined by two more female professionals and strategists, marketing strategists. We have Reeves from JanKelly and Gemma Spadafora, currently at McMaster. So thanks so much for being here with me, ladies.
It's great.
So we're having a discussion about professional brand and building that online, and obviously you guys have built brands online, so we're going to the pros here on this subject matter. Not sure if you guys have any thoughts about what kind of content people should create.
On personal brand?
Yes.
So whenever I'm creating brand, at least from McMaster's side, I'm always trying to address the fundamentals. So one, who am I looking to talk to? And two, what am I trying to tell them, or what actions am I trying to get out of them? I feel like if I establish that at the very beginning, at the outset, when I loop back around and I'm trying to create content, it helps clarify and crystallize where I'm trying to go with it.
Yeah. and just thinking about what your audience is interested in, and like sort of your personal sphere of expertise, and like what they are already exposed to and what they'd like to hear from you. If you're a designer, for example, you're not going to probably post like a thought leadership article. I mean, maybe you are, but even it can even get more granular than that. Maybe your customers are people who actually don't know anything about design, and they're coming to you because you know lots and they're looking for your expertise. But maybe your customers are actually people who know tons about design, but they don't really have time, and they're actually very cultured people with great eyes. So maybe your content is really more posting inspiration from around the world or things like that. So it can get really granular, for sure.
And I've heard the theory that, depending on what your goal is, obviously going back to what the purpose of your channel is, if you're just sort of a professional, you're going on LinkedIn specifically, and you just want to sort of build your network and then sort of keep on top of your industry, the types of content you post should sort of be in 3 buckets. Would you agree with that? Like, you sort of have 3 areas of interest or expertise?
Well, you for sure should make sure that whatever your focus is obvious to your audience. So if you are trying to build thought leadership, it can't be I'm a thought leader about all of these different things. You kind of have to choose a focus, and consistency is key. And that goes for both how often you are sharing content, but also what your point of view is, what your stance is. And the beauty with using, social media or other digital tools, whether it be your website, a blog, and all of these great stuff, is that you can actually measure engagement. So with building your professional brand, your goal should be engagement. And all of these tools allow you to see how is your content resonating, how's the call to action resonating with your audience. And then as you move forward with that strategy of building your professional brand and nurturing your audience and all that great stuff, you're actually able to do more of what is actually resonating with your audience and do a little bit less of what hasn't worked. So at the end of the day, when you start off, test a few things, whether it be content formats, content topics, frequency of posting, what the weighing between curated and created is. Test it and see what's actually working out.
And what are your thoughts about video? Because obviously we're hearing that video is kind of becoming the most important media to be put on these social channels.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have video expertise and experience. So what are your thoughts about video and how to get that done?
Yeah,
for those art video editors.
You're right. It has the most engagement. I think it's like 5 times more than other types of content, and it's usually like 5 times more expensive, which is like super frustrating. Having said that, there are tons of apps that you can use on your phone. My brother's gonna kill me. He's like a professional videographer. He's like, no! Anyway, certainly it does pay off to hire somebody if that's kind of that, if that better, if that's in your budget and if that aligns with your brand. But certainly you can do that on your phone. You really just wanna make sure you have the right lighting, really good audio, a non-distracting background, something that really reflects what you wanna say about yourself and your brand. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just taking the time, I think, to understand who you want to speak to and what it is that you want to say about yourself or what you want to speak to. I think being purposeful and taking the time to think that through as opposed to just jumping right in, it helps.
And going back to our earlier conversation, so this is sort of new, and it's a new idea. We don't really know what the outcomes are going to be because this is a sort of an evolving industry. So people need to build the professional brands, but there's not an immediate outcome. It's sort of a long game, and you want to build your pipeline because you want to build your networks online, and you might not have a use for that today, but it's sort of long term that we should be doing some steps here. And I think for mostly what I see of my colleagues is they post their job status updates, but I find it really interesting when they share interesting thought leadership. Either they curated themselves or they're sharing from someone else. And we've talked a little bit about posting frequency, but what other types of mediums should professionals get involved with? And I'm not talking about influencers or mainstream content creators, but those that are just sort of wanting to stay on top of their industry and be positioned as kind of an expert or a leader or knowledgeable in their space.
Yeah, so like what types of content can they post sort of from that helpful, valuable thought leadership angle? Well, certainly they can post their own thoughts if they have them, but there's tons of things you can do. You can post slide decks, like SlideShare is actually, I think LinkedIn owns SlideShare, so you can post slides, you can post articles, if I follow a lot of content related media, and so that would be something that I might share, and just by virtue of me sharing it, I'm aligning with their expertise. So it doesn't, again, you were saying before, it doesn't always have to be created, it can be curated. And that's something that I would do, is follow people in your industry who are making some noise and ride their coattails when you don't have something to say.
And also, I've heard you talk about this before, because what we're seeing now is there's so much content, and it's not all good content. And better to share good content than create something that maybe isn't great because you don't have the time, or you're just not at that level yet.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Going to your point, you said something interesting. Going to the point about trying to create content that you might not necessarily need right now, but you could use long term or use in the future. I try to almost backwards engineer where I want to go, and then see what I can learn from different industries or different thought leaders or different people that are within the current space that I'm either trying to work within or get involved in. I think that is also something that you could do.
Yeah, no.
And make actually like series content. So make it all kind of in one shot.
Yeah.
Have your goal, and then just kind of break it apart into bite-sized chunks so that you can kind of
it
share
goes back
moving
to
forward.
that idea of editorial calendar,
Yeah.
right? If you can plan some of it, then you can, you have some banked for a little while. But also like live content. I mean, Instagram you can do live stories. Facebook has had Facebook Live for a while, and LinkedIn just introduced live. We go to so many events. We go to so many great we see so many great speakers, conferences, all of that great stuff. Like, that's such an easy thing to capture and share. And then it allows you to connect with the people who either went to the same event or who are there at the same time as you. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
Is that the advantage of live content? Because I feel like maybe, and I mean, I'm more professional. You guys are the marketers, PR agents. It's very vulnerable to be live because there's no editing. It's like, here we go. And I think, like, I didn't know LinkedIn was launching that, so that's very interesting.
They just
on
did.
the business
I think,
Yeah, yeah. No, they have. And I think your audience probably has more grace for you, though. When you're live, it's like people understand that it's live. They're not expecting.
So I think
polished.
It's human nature to fumble and to trip over your words. And I think if you're speaking live and you're speaking on Instagram stories, people are more, I think, forgiving and compassionate in the sense that, like, it takes a lot of courage to be able to get up and speak, whether it's live or in video. So I think people are a little bit more forgiving in that sense.
What about building your network? Do you have any other thoughts on how to, like, we're talking about linking in with people. How else do you build your network? Like, is it through that content creation or using hashtags, or any thoughts on that?
I like building my network. So similar to what you guys were talking about earlier, whenever I go to an event, I try to connect with people, staying connected through LinkedIn, but also extending sort of an invite and meeting people for coffee, or having also that face-to-face interaction, I think, has so much value, and I hope that doesn't get lost amongst all of this new technology and social media and different ways to engage online. I think there's a lot of value in meeting face-to-face and having those in-person conversations.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Totally. But to your point, using hashtags and sort of that keyword strategy, and thinking about posting your content with really specific keywords, the things people might search. It's a slow burn. It's not like you're going to get thousands of followers in a couple of days. I mean, unless you have something that goes viral. But if you're just producing consistently good stuff that people are interested in, and that's getting shared, people are going to pay attention, and eventually that's going to pay off.
Yeah, and how about engaging your audience? So you've shown up, you've got your presence edited, you're starting to post content, and you've built some sort of a network through the personal relationships you have, and then kind of extending out, going through LinkedIn or Instagram, and following other people, having them follow you back. Now, how do you engage with them? And is that just going back to really smart content curation, or is there other tips and tricks?
I think it's also about how you actually share that content. So ask a question. Don't just share something. Invite a conversation so that people feel compelled to comment on what you share, that people feel compelled to answer the question. Tag some people, maybe be like, hey, so-and-so, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And then you've invited them to chime in, join some groups, get involved in those conversations, especially if they're specific to your industry and your kind of hot topics. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. At the end of the day, it's not just about sharing, it needs to be engaging, and the only way that it can be engaging is if it sparks a conversation, and that starts with you inviting that conversation, really.
And I like your point, sorry, about tagging others into your posts, right? If you went to an event and you went along with a few other people, or, you know, if you're involved in a project with some other people, if you're both like, or if there's multiple people, you're tagging each other in, you're sharing it, you're all promoting it, it gets a little bit more opportunity for further shares, but also it gives it more credibility because it's not just you saying this happened or this is a great idea. There's more people putting their name behind it.
Totally. I think another tip is also just to share other people's stuff and to comment on their stuff too, because people take notice of that. And if you take the time to engage in your community and support what they're doing, I think people will feel loyal to you, and they're probably more likely to share your stuff and kind of engage with your post. So there's a reciprocity there.
And I think just starting, by starting to share and starting to post, I think oftentimes as young professionals develop their network and they want to start sharing, they question or second guess themselves. Or if they're trying to write an article, there's this imposter syndrome, like, does anyone really care about what I'm talking about? And I think you do have a lot to offer, so think through it and then just take the jump and share and engage and have conversations with people and to continue the conversation and to Kamila's point, to spark the conversation.
And what about that? Because if you're sharing some content, maybe it's not directly related to your professional life, right, as we do on social media, how much of effect does that have on your reputation? Do people need to be concerned about that still, or as long as you've kind of indicated it's private?
I think I don't always separate personal from professional. I think at one point we used to think that it's, you know, church and state, but I think oftentimes they're very interconnected, especially with social media now. So understanding what you're talking about, or just not necessarily saying that you're an expert in the field, but you want to learn more about it. So it's inviting that conversation and sort of leading it along that way and proposing it that way, I think.
So we got about 20 seconds left. Really tight. Any final takeaways, Jen?
My final takeaway is to feel free to experiment. So you want thought leadership, but maybe you also want to do like an emotional pull as well. And maybe you want to do something that's like hilarious, or, you know what I mean? Like, just don't feel like you're limited to your professional self and you have to kind of stay in that box.
I think that's so great. Thank you so much, ladies, for being here with me and joining in on the conversation.
Thanks for having us.